a 3 acre piece of ground? How many stalls can I get, and what could I rent that for?
So 3 acres, I mean, perfect dimensions. You're gonna fit 90 truck and trailer slips on it,
Okay.
right?
So 30 per acre, roughly.
Right.
Okay.
Perfect dimensions. You lose space
Wow.
on angles and triangles, right?
Yeah.
But call it 90. And if
Okay.
you're in Miami, for example, the average rate on our platform in Miami is $550 a month per stall. So
Wow.
you're at what, 18,000 a month?
Welcome to the Xplor Show, where we dive into the worlds of entrepreneurship, real estate, and motivation. Each week, we bring you inspiring conversations with people who are exploring new frontiers and shaping the business world. Thank you for tuning in. Now let's get to the show. Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Xplor Show with Scott and Ryan. It's a beautiful day in here in Kansas City. Scott, how's it going, man?
Going well, Ryan. Every day is a beautiful day, especially this time of year. Hasn't got too hot, so we cannot complain yet.
Exactly. Hey, I just wanted to congratulate you on your Ironman you just finished. For those of you that follow you on social media, that's a big deal, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I was out in Chattanooga for those that don't know, and ran a 70.3 this weekend. So it was a lot of fun. Kind of broke down there at the end of it, halfway through the run. So I struggled a little bit more than I thought. And overall, though, went well. Had a lot of fun and going to get back out there and continue to compete. So
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, congrats on that. Well, we do have an exciting episode. We got a guest on with us today. If you're watching, you see there's a third guy here on the screen. Jake Guso. Scott, did you want to give him a little introduction?
yeah, well, we'll let Jake kind of do it. But, I've ran across Jake on social media, and he and his company are doing some really interesting stuff in the development and real estate sector, in my opinion. So wanted to bring him on and just kind of learn a little bit more about who he is, what their company is doing. So Jake, welcome to the show.
Thanks, guys. And honor for me to be here.
Yeah, we're
Truly, as I
excited to
mentioned.
talk a little bit and learn more about kind of your guys' niche. You guys have a really unique niche, in my opinion. Tell us, Jake, first start off with just kind of who you are, what your background is, and then we'll get a little bit more into your company.
Yeah, so I'm really a real estate guy. I've been a real estate guy my whole career, which has been the better part of a decade. And right now we're building a software company that I'll get into later, but my background was primarily in retail assets and brokerage activities down here in South Florida. And I acted a little bit on the principal side with some guys that actually buy over in Kansas City, where you guys are based out of. But primarily it was retail brokerage down here in Miami. I don't remember exactly when I stumbled on the outdoor storage truck parking opportunity, which is really viewed as a problem now. So sometime over the past 2 years, one of my clients in the retail sector had an operating yard, right? Managed truck parking facility. And he was like, oh, come check it out. We're making pretty good money. And it intrigued me. So I ended up walking into what I now know is like the cream of the crop in terms of location and amenities for a truck parking facility down here in Miami. And I get to talking up the security guard. And he's telling me about the facility, and he's like, "Oh, well, we've got 420 slips or stalls.
Wow.
We charge $750 a month per stall, and we're
Holy
at
cow.
100% occupancy with a wait list." And he
Hang on,
just blew my mind.
$700 per stall. That's over $30,000 a month.
750 a stall on 420 stalls.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
And
huge
that's
facility.
just parking lot. Is that correct?
It's all parking, but this was what we call like a Class A facility now. We didn't know it at the time, but it was an asphalt surface, which is important in terms of rate. It had security, cameras, food trucks, truck wash. They even had little like domino tables for the guys to play in. And location was just like A plus.
Wow. So hang on, let's step back here real quick. So you were in the retail business. So you were selling retail real estate or just investing in real estate?
No, pretty much all brokerage. So leasing and
All
sales
brokerage.
down here in South Florida. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. And then You got into this about 2 years ago. And what's the name of your company? The Rig Hut Trucking, is that correct?
The rig hut, yeah, truck parking.
Yes. And you had a client that was involved in this. So is that individual, are they still a client today, or kind of how did they get you interested in it?
So I'm no longer acting in a brokerage capacity. We're going all in on the rig hut, which I'll tell you a little bit more about. To answer your question directly, he's still a friend, right? Like I can call him up. But his facility was super small. He just gave me the idea to like, hey, look into this.
Kind of blew your mind.
Yeah. And it wasn't even him directly. I just happened to go into this yard, which was like I said, A plus. Right?
I had a question about the yard. So there's food trucks and Domino's. So these aren't guys are dropping them off and going home. They're staying here somewhat like what you would on a truck stop on the side of the highway, but it's a little more secure with some amenities. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. So they did have what we call overnight parking component, which is the guy that's just passing through. But a majority of the guys that were parking in that specific facility were local drivers that'll do a route, pick up a container in the port of Miami and drop it off in Orlando or somewhere close, and then come back home that night. So that type of user, they're not long-term agreements. They're monthly, typically, okay. Month to month. But you get a little bit more projectability with that type of tenancy as opposed to the overnight guys, which would be like a Loves or a Flying J or a Pilot.
Okay, right? So the food trucks and the game tables and stuff like that are for more of the overnight stays and those guys.
For them, looking back on it now, it was really a way to drive rates, I think, because every driver in Miami wants to park in that facility. And really no one's got anything that competes with them even close. I mean, in terms of quality.
Well, I can imagine. I mean, the ground cost alone in Miami is not cheap, right? Although they are getting crazy rent, in my opinion, that the price is very strong. It would be very expensive to go buy, say, 10 acres in Miami, prime real estate location right now, and put pavement down to do something like this. Is that correct?
That's correct. And by way of an example, another thing that blew my mind, I don't remember what the going rate for industrial land was at the time, but right now for extremely high quality, well located, perfectly dimensioned industrial land in Miami, you can probably get $2.7 to $3 million an acre, right? Just based on the land basis. This facility sold on a cap rate for $4 million an acre.
Jesus Christ.
That was kind of
where does it sit? Why is it, what makes it, is it like by the ports and the airport, or where is it? Both.
So it's on the Golden Glades interchange, which I assume you guys don't know where that is, but it's basically the intersection of every major highway in South Florida, and your close proximity to both the Port of Miami and Port Everglades in Fort Lauderdale.
Just prime real estate.
Yeah, prime.
Oh my God.
Prime, and they had the revenue, right?
Oh yeah, exactly. I mean, that's bringing in $30,000 or more a month just on the rent. So that, $4 million per acre, that makes sense, I guess, when you're talking those kind of numbers.
It's bringing in a lot more than that.
Yeah, what was it? 400 spots?
About 300,000 a month.
Oh, I forgot a zero. Jesus Christ.
Yeah. It gets crazy. It's like,
not only is that crazy, I mean, that is insane. That is amazing that you could make that much off of just owning ground with some asphalt on it. Now, obviously, you got to do a few other things today, but that's the general basis of it. Is that right?
That's correct. It's very low capital improvements relative to like your other conventional types of real estate.
So are these,
if you're in the right location,
are these zoned then industrial for the most part, light industrial?
For the most part, yeah, you need industrial zoning. For sure, in Florida, you need industrial zoning.
Yeah, I know some other states might be a little bit different there, but wow, that's amazing. So tell us a little bit more about Rig Hut truck parking. What are you guys doing? You said you started a software business. Let's get into those details.
Yeah, so that's how I kind of stumbled on the opportunity, right? And then my partner Jose and I were thinking, how can we take advantage of this, right? Because there was already some inklings in the news of guys, putting together funds for this iOS thing that no one knew what it was at the time. And long story short, we stumbled on the idea of creating a marketplace, right? We knew someone that had built a marketplace for an ancillary business. And he was generous enough to give us the framework. And we were like, hey, we could replicate this down in South Florida. I mean, the problem is huge nationwide in terms of shortage, right? So fundamentally, the only statistic that is relatively reliable in terms of the source is there are 11 drivers per legal parking space in the United States, right? So huge supply demand imbalance. And down here in South Florida, I don't have any statistical evidence to this, but it's got to be more than that. And part of the problem is the drivers, specifically the over-the-road guys that are not local, don't know where to look. Like most of these yards don't have an online presence. It's basically word of mouth, or you're well located and you happen to be on a highway or road that a truck happens to drive by and you have a sign outside. So we were like, okay, we can solve the transparency problem with the marketplace, right? The drivers can go on a site, see a map, where is there space available today? And we can also sort of incentivize the landowner side to accommodate this use by making it easier for them to operate, right? A lot of the nightmare is like people don't want to be dealing with cash or Zelle. There's no reporting on the managed truck parking side because it's so sort of high intensity. These guys are in and out all the time. So that was the original idea of the marketplace, which my partner Jose and I built with very little tech or software engineering experience. And that got us off the ground, right? But it's not the optimal product that we wanted. So we're rebuilding it now. It'll be commercially available in about 30 days. Completely revamped marketplace and user experience, super easy to use. And we're layering in some property management software specifically packaged for outdoor storage so that the landowners can really optimize those facilities. And we'll have the ability to tie into gates as well to create a fully automated yard.
Wow. So a couple questions. You said there are 11 drivers per legal parking spot for trucking right now in America. Is that right?
That's correct.
So what?
Well, that is what the data says. I don't know if it's actually correct.
Yeah, but why is it so? Why are there so many drivers and so little parking? Like, why hasn't this been brought to our attention in the years past? Why is it now becoming more of highlighted, I guess, out there and a known problem? Any thoughts on that?
So it's been about a decade before truck parking was really in the news, right? And it entered the news because this guy, his name was Jason. Long story short, he ended up getting robbed and killed for the contents of his container because he was delivering a load early and he was forced, the delivery spot wouldn't let him in. So he was forced to park overnight in an abandoned gas station.
Oh, wow.
And his wife, his widow, created this initiative. I don't remember the exact name, but she basically put it on the map. She put it in the news and she got some federal funding allocated to building truck parking. And that was sort of when it entered the ether of the real estate world. As to why no one took advantage of it back then, I don't particularly know.
It's kind of no man's land, so people were probably a little bit afraid, to get into something new.
Probably. And to be fair, there's guys that have operated truck parking yards forever, like generational owners, but we just didn't call them outdoor storage assets back then.
So that's a super sad story, and truck drivers are, the backbone of this country, especially nowadays with everything we're doing with shipping, and they need a safe place to sleep. And that's what these laws provide. So Rig Hut, just so I understand. So like apartments.com, basically you can manage your rental through their platform and do payments and run all your forms and everything through there. That's essentially what you're doing for the trucking outdoor storage industry, where if I own a lot here in Kansas City, I could list it with you and you help me manage my payments and my paperwork and all that. Is that kind of the gist?
That's correct. So if you had a yard, you would get access to our driver network. We spend money on SEO and advertising to drive demand to your facility, and we give you the tools to manage it effectively on the back end. So payments, a reservation system, management, reporting, all that.
So, and if this is not a feature, I would love to get a little credit for it. If is there like a membership deal where I'm a member of Rig Hut? There's a lot in Miami. There's a lot in Atlanta. I have to take a load to Atlanta. Can I be like, hey, I need a spot here for a night, and then I'm gonna drive back? Is that kind of a feature?
That's sort of in the long-term plans. It's difficult to actually practice that until you have a nationwide network where you know these guys are going to be like wherever they go, you have a yard.
Right. So that's, I guess that's big picture down the road. That's ideal. So then a truck driver can just pay for a membership, and wherever he goes, he has a spot that's secure, safe, food, what have you.
Right.
Makes sense. No, I think that's a really great concept. I love the idea of owning one of these yards, having a investment property that is basically a concrete pad. I mean, it's provided a great service, but it sounds kind of low maintenance. And are you guys kind of rating on your website of like, hey, this one is gated, this one is not? What are some of the features in the back end? And maybe could you go into the legwork of what all it took to build this software?
Yeah. So in terms of something you reference with like gated, we call that an amenity, right? So is it gated? Is it an asphalt or an aggregate surface? Is there security? Are there cameras? All that stuff. We call those amenities, right? Mm-hmm. And the landlord, as he uploads his facility, would be able to clearly show what amenities he provides at that yard. If you are we haven't figured out what we're going to name this yet, but there are operators throughout the country that truck parking is their primary business, right? So these guys typically go above and beyond to make sure that their facilities are secure. The spaces are laid out efficiently so that it's easy for the drivers to pull in and out of. So we're trying to figure out how we can designate those operators that have purpose-built truck parking facilities and go above and beyond, so we can highlight them, right? And say, hey, this is X degree above normal, I guess would be the term.
Yeah. You kind of rate it on like a 5-star type rating. If they have these additional things, these guys are like top notch. And then, 4-star is all of these features and kind of down from there. Is that right?
That's correct.
That's kind of the idea.
The drivers will have the ability to rate the yards themselves.
Yeah. That is awesome. It's almost going to make it kind of like not an Uber for truck driving, but a platform like that where you get to rate the drivers, and then really, I guess the lot owners could rate the drivers get to rate the lots. The lot owners could rate the drivers as well at some point if they wanted to. So then if somebody's coming into town, if they're a great truck driver and you want to get a spot for them, they got 5 stars. Like, okay, how do we figure this out?
Right.
No, I love that. And phase 2, though, my question is, and this is kind of where I ran across your path, Jake. You had put a design out it was an interesting layout of a piece of ground, a little bit unique. And you had helped kind of maximize the efficiency and the usage on that ground. That's something that you guys are really striving to do more of. Is that right?
We're trying to provide it as an additional service to our yard owners, right? So I sort of believe in the premise of add value, give a bunch of stuff for free, and it'll eventually come back, and that falls into that sort of category. And the purpose really is to figure out max efficiency, right? We're not architects. Our team is not architects. We're not engineers. We have the ability to take a survey or at least an aerial image of the photo with dimensions and tell you this is the maximum that you're going to put on this site, right? So for feasibility purposes, typically.
And how
And
do you
then you
guys
can,
go about doing that? Is that through software that you use, or?
we've gone through a zillion different ways of doing it. We've now figured out a pretty efficient way of doing it, which is one really smart employee with a little bit of technology behind him.
I love that. So let's break it down a little bit. If I had a 3-acre plat of ground, just say it's a square, rectangle, just pretty basic on this one. Roughly how many stalls can I get per acre? And say it's in Texas or even in Florida, whichever market you know better. What's a 3-acre piece of ground? How many stalls can I get? And what could I rent that for?
So 3 acres, I mean, perfect dimensions. You're going to fit 90 truck and trailer slips on it.
Okay.
Right.
So 30 per acre, roughly.
Right.
Okay.
Perfect dimensions. You lose space on angles and triangles, right?
Yeah.
But call it 90. And if
Okay.
you're in Miami, for example, the average rate on our platform in Miami is $550 a month per stall.
Wow.
So you're at what, 18,000 a month per acre? Is that right?
Wow. Yeah, that's about right. Yeah, a little bit high, but that's coming in close.
16.5.
Yeah, I was gonna say closer to 15. Yeah. Holy cow. That's insane. So then
Yeah, but think of your basis, right?
yes.
I told you earlier, well located, perfect site. You're
Several million
two
per
and a
acre.
half, $3 million an acre.
Yeah, which adds up. Plus, you're going to have cost for getting this developed, right? You got to put your pavement or your concrete down, plus the security. Roughly, what's that cost?
It's so variable throughout the country. I stopped answering that question a long time ago, but it the it it depends on where you are, right? Like down here in South Florida, we have a lime rock subsurface. It's very hard, right? So as long as that lime rock is pretty close to the elevation that you need, which is typically the crown of the main road that services your property, then you don't need that much fill, right? And the fill is what's expensive here. But there's some segments of South Florida that have a lime rock base, but they have a ton of muck on top of it. So you've got to scrape all the muck out, which is typically feet, not inches, and then you've got to refill that with fill.
That can get expensive.
For sure. I mean, you've got drainage, electrical. So if you go to an asphalt surface, that's like
we're
talking a lot of
crazy.
dollars per foot.
Definitely. So we're talking mainly like prime locations close to ports or airports or what have you. Do you think there's a market for these lots since there's such a need to maybe be like maybe 20 minutes outside? Like here in Kansas City, I know Florida, and depending on where you're at, it's a little different, but you could drive 20 minutes and kind of be in a more rural area, not super convenient for the drivers. Do you think there's a market there since it's such a needed deal, or is it like you need to be prime and convenient?
you don't need to be prime. So prime is really a driver of your rate. In the end, there's a price for everything, right? The challenge of going too rural is usually not distance. It's you're not allowed to do it. So there's no ag. You can't do this on ag land. It's really got to be industrial. And there's a big not in my backyard sentiment typically. So like if you're trying to rezone something and you're near a residential area or close to an ag area, you're typically going to get some pushback if you require a public hearing.
And that's happening across the country in all areas. It's not in my backyard type thing. Everybody's, hey, we need to fix this. We need to have more affordable housing. We need to have this. But as long as it doesn't impact me or my neighborhood or my value of my property. And it's very difficult when you've got that aspect of it involved on top of everything else all the barriers you've already got to take down before that comes into play.
Yeah, so Miami-Dade County actually has an interesting solution to that. So we have, what's called the urban development boundary, which is an imaginary line drawn by the county commission that says you cannot build anything outside of here with greater density of, I think, 1 home per 5 or 10 acres. Very low density. They chose 2 spots outside of the urban development boundary and amended their master plan to allow truck parking.
Wow.
They don't allow industrial development, but they allow truck parking. So there's some guys that bought land a long time ago at a really low basis that are now printing money because they bought ag land, and they can park trucks on it now. And it keeps what they call an eyesore outside of the bulk of the resi areas, right? Both areas are divided by the turnpike. One is, they're both the turnpike actually in both areas. So pretty good barrier.
So
they got a lot of stalls out there.
Was this these owners got lucky, or were they kind of like, hey, we have or do you know?
I don't know the answer. Knowing how things work down here, there's probably an element of both.
Gotcha. So I guess you'll give it, do they use Rig Hut? That's the question.
We're working on it.
Yeah. All right. There we go.
We're working on it.
So we got to be nice.
In regard to Rig Hut, where are you guys currently at? What cities, states are you guys currently in?
The bulk of our facilities operating on the platform right now are in South Florida. So basically Palm Beach South. We've got one yard actually in Kansas City that is operating on the platform now, kind of between Kansas City and Independence.
Okay.
Right off 435.
Yep.
We've got one in Dallas and we've got one in New Jersey on the existing platform, which, as I alluded to earlier, was not really scalable. On the rebuild, our pipeline is fairly robust throughout the country.
So when you're out there trying to find new landowners or truck parking owners to come onto your platform, what are you guys looking for?
Ideally, well-located industrial land that is already operating as a parking facility. Now, I mentioned there's a problem of supply, right? So a lot of this stuff is being built, and we work with the landlords through that process and help as best we can. But our ideal facility is something that we can add value to immediately, which would be something that's already operating, but not at an optimal level.
Okay, and in regards to that same individual that's going to use your platform, what's it cost them, or what do they have to pay to be on your platform?
So we're toying with a few different pricing models for the rebuild. Most of our competitors and similarly modeled businesses charge a transaction fee that typically ranges in this sector between 18 and 30% of whatever they process. And coming from the real estate world, I just feel like that's too much, right?
It's pretty high. I mean, that's impressive.
Yeah, it's like you're used to paying brokerage commissions of 6 points or 3 points, even on a larger scale,
or
deal,
even
right?
management of like 8 to 10%. You're talking like Airbnb management at this point, 25, 30%.
Which it is, right? It's sort of a short-term rental, but we have the ability, based on our scale, we think, to go with more of a flat fee model, which is kind of what we're rolling out right now, which slides based on scale, but it starts at $15 a month per slip, flat fee. And then we'll take 5% of whatever we process, but we eat the cost of the processing. So we pay the Visa and the Amex and all those costs.
Got it.
And which I think does a couple of things, right? On the larger operators that have scale, they get to keep a lot more of their upside. We're not eating into 18, 20, 25% of every transaction they do across their entire portfolio, which sometimes spans thousands of slips. And two, on the smaller facilities, we don't kill your margins.
Yep. No, that makes complete sense. So you guys would then you would collect the rent, the payment from the truck drivers or whoever is making that payment, and then you would send that to the owners. Is that correct?
Sort of. So on the new version, our processor will split off the top. So if we collect, and there's that sort of subscription model, right? Since we have the PM software, we want you to upload all of your slips onto the platform so you have the ability to manage them remotely, right? And so it's a flat fee based on the slips, and then when the actual transaction comes in, it'll split off the top. So if it's $100, 95 goes straight into your checking account, and $5 goes to us.
Okay. Very easy.
Right.
So essentially it is like an Airbnb type model. Hey, rent this piece or you could upload your lots, your slips to this platform, and we'll help do all the marketing, everything else. And you get directly paid pretty much right away.
That's correct. And it helps us and it helps you, right? We don't hold your money, and we're not mixing yards revenues, right? It kind of became a nightmare from a reporting standpoint. And our processor has a lot of built-in and robust reporting. So these guys will basically they'll be able to pull whatever they want directly out of our system.
Awesome. Is there a fee to the truck drivers?
No.
No fee to the truck drivers. Okay. No. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think sounds like an amazing platform, to be honest. And I
appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a huge benefit to the landowners, especially if they're going to leverage all of what you guys are offering and providing, such as, hey, we can actually maximize the efficiency on this. It might take a little more money, but, we can compare if it's going to be worth adding a few more stalls by changing the layout of this ground and this parking lot. And that's all part of the service, right?
For sure.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see why an owner wouldn't at least let you guys come in and run that for them, just to see if there's any way to continue to produce more. Because at the end of the day, these things are cash cows, it sounds like.
They are if you buy them at the right price, right?
Yeah, your basis has to be right.
Right. And you're right on in the sense that part of the pitch is we have the ability to maximize your revenue, right? But in addition to that, we have the ability to tie into most what we call smart gates, which is basically a gate that has an internet connection with an API. If you don't, we have a hardware partner that can install it for you, and that ties directly into our reservation system. So you can truly create a low intensive, from a management perspective, facility. So
explain to us what a smart gate does, or what it tracks, or exactly what that is.
It's basically a gate, electric gate that has a motor, so it has the ability to open and close on its own, and then it has some sort of controlled access mechanism on both sides of the gate. So whether that be a keypad or a barcode reader or a license plate reader, the mechanism doesn't really matter. We're sort of agnostic in that sense. But basically, if you're a driver, right, and you have a confirmed reservation on our platform, if you have a keypad, for example, we tie into your smart gate if you have it, and we'll generate a unique code for that driver. So your code is 1234 star. You go in, we automatically assign the slip based on what we know is available, because ideally we have the whole yard on the platform. And then when that guy goes out, we also know. So we have real-time information on who's in the facility and what is available, as opposed to having a manager kind of walk around and go, oh, 92 is not here anymore. We should probably rent that one.
Yep. Wow. So not only can you guys maximize the efficiency and usage of the lot, but you're going to maximize people staying there, and you're going to know faster than the landowner might, especially a smaller shop that might not be there all day, every day. You guys are going to know when people are coming and going, so you get the thing leased back up as quickly as possible.
That's the idea, right? And it's really the landlord. Like, the landlord is going to be the guy or his manager is going to be the one seeing this information. But the real purpose is so that he doesn't really have to watch it that much. If it's vacant and someone books it and you have an automated facility, just let them in.
Yeah. And it's going to be ultimate convenience for the drivers, because I'm sure eventually, in the ideal world, just like you badge into an office or something, you're going to be able to have a deal on your phone where the driver can just pull up, and he already has the access. He paid for the spot or whatever. He just scans it. It opens up. And like you said, in the future, all your lots across the platform, you should be able to use the same thing if you get everybody in line with the smart gates, right?
That's correct.
Yeah. I mean, that's going to be, for the truck drivers, it's going to be great. It doesn't cost them, any extra, and they're going to have a safe spot to park with easy access. He's not waiting for the guy to drive down the street to unlock the deal and get in. I mean, it sounds like a win all around.
Yeah,
sure.
what a cool concept this entire thing is. And you guys I love this. The idea behind it is genius. I mean, I think trucking, obviously we see, is becoming more and more of a need, especially with how quick everybody is expecting things to get delivered, or, there's going to continue, the trucking industry is going to continue to grow. And even if it doesn't, there's still such a lag in demand, it sounds like, as the 11-to-1 ratio that you spoke of at the beginning of this, where there's 11 truckers per parking spot. There's still a lot of catch up that needs to be done. So you guys have a huge runway, it sounds like, to really get out there, crush it in this sector. What's the end goal? I mean, do you want to build this thing up and try to sell it? Do you want to continue to be owner operator? What's that look like?
So, I mean, we want to scale the platform to the point where we're a nationwide network in terms of supply, which is a lot owners. And we can really provide a service to the drivers and say, like, okay, you're on the rig, like, you're going to find space wherever you go. That's the end goal. How many slips will that take? We'll find out as we add more drivers. But that's sort of the end goal. In regards to selling the company or keeping it, I try not to think with an exact exit in mind.
Gotcha. So I do have a question.
Sure.
Going back to the beginning, you run into this lot, you realize how much money and stuff they're making from it. Why did you decide to go towards the software and, like, I'm going to build a management platform versus I'm going to go find lots?
Yeah, so I skipped that part. That was the original idea. The original idea was, okay, rates are going to go straight up into the right, at least down here in South Florida. Like, let's buy as much of this stuff as we can. There's a combination of, am I allowed to, like, be not politically correct?
Sure. However you want to be.
So there's a component of, we didn't have the balls to do it, right? You really need scale. I told you the metrics for cost of land down here in South Florida. Your sweet spot in terms of size is 4 to 8 acres, right? Let's use $3 million. That's 12 to 24 million bucks per acquisition, right? It's very hard to finance these things. So it was going to require a lot of equity, and the equity side is going to be very aggressive in their terms because they know it's not financeable. And this is sort of a niche, right? This was an unknown at the time. Additionally, with what we expected to pay in pref as a GP, we were really counting on, the only way that we were going to make money, like, that was worth our effort, was on the exit. Mm-hmm. And I don't really love that model. I don't think it's aligned, right, for GPs and LPs if the GP only makes money on an exit. So we just racked our brains and we were like, how else can we take advantage of this opportunity and provide a service to the market? And we landed on the tech side.
Makes sense.
Good question. So
I was just, because my mind would be
coming from the real estate background, that makes sense to ask that, right? Why would you all of a sudden shift when you've been doing real estate for the last however so many years? It is an interesting concept to just completely jump ship.
Right. And it's been a huge learning curve. Like, my partner, Jose, and I, our biggest deficiency originally was really on that tech side. We've learned a ton, and now we have the ability to manage that operation ourselves, but it's been a huge learning curve, which is awesome, honestly.
Yeah.
And that whole, you feel like you're drinking from a fire hose thing, I hadn't felt that in a long time. I felt that when I first got into the real estate business, but then I don't want to say it was dull, but we were sort of at, like, the max intake of new knowledge. It was just reframing the same knowledge. And when we started with the software, it was like, whoa, this is a whole new world. You don't even know what you don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what's the team currently look like?
What's that?
What's your team look like?
So my partner, Jose, and I do the bulk of the work. We've got a couple of employees that work on a part-time basis. We leverage some overseas talent. We're working on a partnership that's not solidified yet, but that will ease the workload a little bit. Can't really talk about that yet.
That's all right.
Well, it sounds great. It sounds like you got a lot going on. Is there anything else you're working on right now? Or is this, I know you're big into fishing. You still getting out there or are you too busy?
Yeah, no, unfortunately, no. I've only been fishing once this year. And by
Gotta take some time
contrast,
away, man.
I love what I'm doing, honestly. I don't feel like I'm losing anything.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I recently got married. I got married in December. And
Congratulations.
I spend time with thank you. I spend time with my wife when I'm not in the office, but I love being in the office.
That's
You
awesome.
gotta love what you do when you're working nonstop.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Otherwise, you're going to burn out. You're done.
Yes.
Definitely. Well, hey, where can people find you? I know you're pretty active on Twitter. Any other socials? You got the Rig Hut website and we'll link everything. But if people want to maybe get involved or just have questions about the service, where can they find you and where to reach out?
I'd say just DM me on Twitter. If you search Rig Hut Truck Parking, you'll find it. Hey, that's where we're the most active. We have a newsletter component. We try to provide value there. We have an Instagram and a Facebook, not super active right now. Twitter is definitely the best place.
And before we go, I do have a question. So are you guys
Sure.
raising capital? Are you guys kind of comfortable where you're at? Like what's it look like in that aspect?
That's what I alluded to earlier. So we're hopefully in the closing process of a raise.
So you want no more money, Ryan? Sorry, man.
Not at this time.
They aren't taking any more checks.
Dang. I had one in the mail. Just send it back.
It might look. it might change, but for now, we think this is an awesome partner. If I get the opportunity to talk to you guys again, I'd love to tell you about them.
Oh yeah, whenever this goes down and this happens, we'd like to have you back on the podcast.
Yeah, be my pleasure.
Yeah. Well,
awesome.
If there's anything ever we can do for you, Jake, this is, we're excited to see this launch and grow, and we'll definitely be following your journey. We're both following you on Twitter, Scott.
And I've got a few contacts I'm going to reach out to and probably link you with some different lots, especially in Texas, that I've got some contacts to. So I will be in touch with you. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Much appreciated, guys.
What's our commissions look like when we start signing people up?
We love paying people, man.
Hey, there we go. There we go. Yeah. All right. Well, hey, if you guys have anything else before we sign off here?
No, I appreciate it, Jake. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you guys for having me. Truly.
Yeah. Thanks, Jake. And thanks to everybody for listening to the Xplor Show. We'll link all of Jake's info in the description below. And please like and follow and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And as always, we'll catch you on the next one.